higher. When the weather comes, and it's good weather, officers, as they approach the fiscal year ending in July, they use their vacation time in this facility. We also have our events, like the parades, like different events because of the Indian Wells, Pine Rock Park, they have a cost with it for overtime. I'm pleased to announce that the police department continues to present a reasonable budget while protecting and serving the citizens' safety remains to be our utmost priority. We create a budget based on our needs and properly allocate our funds. However, as we receive the necessary requested funds, we continue to be fiscally responsible by continuously looking to cost savings. We try to cost savings in all areas of the department. If any funds remain at all, we ask that it be returned back to the general fund, as should every other department. I'm proud to announce that we maintain the state accreditation award again. The state has now mandated through the state statute, that accountability bill, that all police departments pursue Tier 1, Tier 2, Tier 3, and CALIA federal accreditation. Unfortunately, the pursuance of Tier 2 was at a little halt and slowed down due to the pandemic. But we are currently in state compliance. We recently were ranked number 5, which I'm proud to say, and recognized as the 5th safest city in the state of Connecticut. I believe all the officers deserve the credit for that. I open it up to any questions, any clarifications, anything you might need that may help assist in understanding.
Okay, does anybody?
I'll start with my questions, if that's okay, Mr. Chair.
Go ahead.
So I actually want to start with question number 2, which has to do with the payroll from last year. Typically, as long as I've been on A&T, and I think going back many, many years, the police department has typically returned somewhere between $1.2 and $1.8 million back to the general fund each year. Last fiscal year 2020, what's reported to us, and this is something that I asked Mr. Hiller for information on, and unfortunately he wasn't able to provide to me before tonight. All of a sudden last year, the actual spending in full-time payroll was about $4.2 million, which was pretty close to what was budgeted. And I'm having trouble figuring out how that's possible when I think for most of fiscal year 2020, you didn't have even 50 sworn officers, let alone 58. So I guess my question is in 2 parts. One is that accurate?
The data I show for last year for regular payrolls for sworn officers, $4,226,000.
Right.
So that would be accurate. And I don't believe that has been changed by audit.
So what?
Our budget has only increased by like $63,000. I believe we were funded for 50 officers in 2020, which is the same as now. So I'm hoping to reach that goal, and which I'm pretty sure we will be able to. We have an active certified list right now. Within the next couple of months, we're going to be hiring several officers.
Great.
So potentially by the end of this month, we will have 58. So that without looking towards the past, I don't want to make any presumptions. Toward the future, that's what we're funding for. That's what we need.
Right. I understand what you're saying as to what you anticipate coming up for this year. What I'm not understanding is how the department was able to spend $4.2 million funding the regular payroll of 50 officers, and I'm not even sure that it was 50 for most of that year. It might have dropped below 50.
Potentially.
And the total budget has been somewhere in the neighborhood of $4.8 million.
I believe you had this question probably a couple of years ago. With your budget goal of 58, we do everything in our best to hire 58. Sometimes we can't anticipate any problems that we're going to have throughout the year. Sometimes we can't anticipate exactly what is going to stop us from the hiring during that year. But if it's 58, that's the number that should allocate and be approved for 58 officers in there. I really don't understand your question.
That's not right. I'm not asking that question. What I'm asking is, how many officers did you have on regular payroll for fiscal year 2020?
I believe we had probably approximately 50. And we were reaching the no 58. That's what we already said.
Right. I mean, Mr. Hiller, maybe you can provide us at some point
I will
with some
attempt to
information
get that
about
from,
how this adds
payroll
up.
department and, Human Resources.
I think that will probably help to answer my question, because I don't want to ask Mr. Sakara if he's not able to answer that question. I mean, frankly, every year we've sat here and asked the question about why there aren't 58 officers, and we've gotten a variety of answers to that question. Every year, the answer is we're trying to hire, we're doing background checks, people aren't passing the background checks, people have left to go to other departments. We've never gone over 50 officers. So I'm having a hard time figuring out why, again, we're going to park money in this payroll item that, in all likelihood, is not going to be spent.
Well, some of your statements aren't correct. We were over 50 officers. When I joined the police department here, I believe we were at about 58. And I believe the last couple of years, you do ask probably the same questions, repetitive, but those are the answers. I understand you probably don't accept that, but it is the answer. It's a challenge sometimes to hire qualified individuals, and sometimes we'll face challenges. But if our goal is 58 to hire, that's what we need in the budget.
So it seems that this problem is a yearly problem, a recurring problem that hasn't received a settlement as of yet. Money is allocated, and the intent is to hire officers, but this doesn't really transpire, it would seem.
I wouldn't consider it a problem. It's just the challenges that go through in any police department. You hire those police departments right now, that depending upon what their contracts are, people are transferring out of their departments. They have their own department issues as any other department. I find it that if that's the number you're at 58, we're going to do our best to get there, and that's what we should. I mean, we put the safety community first. That's the number that we've come up to, especially in pursuant to accreditation. And it's a good figure. It's a good figure. We can't argue that we've done the best we can with what we have at any and all times. I mean, we've moved down to the 5th safest city. We're recognized, and we're also accredited. I mean, our department is open to the public. It's open to the state. The state actually comes down when you're accredited, and they go through your entire department. They've been through these books and looked through things more than any of the folks on the A&T board with us. And we seem to be in good standing. We're moving forward. I'd like to push it. I think we can actually get to that number 58. I think we can get to it before the fiscal year.
How many officers have left the Shelton Police Department in the last 2 years?
There were 2 officers that transferred out.
Voluntarily?
Yes. What other way would they leave?
Well, you've also terminated officers.
Well, that's funny you should say that. I recognize this line of question, and I also do recognize that you specifically have publicly aligned yourself with the officers who were fired for misconduct, serious misconduct, as well as you publicly aligned yourself with the ones with your election to duty. So I do understand you may have a political agenda, but the safety of the community is here first in the Shelton Police Department. We never expected, and you are right, we are never expected that we would have officers at all to fire 6 officers. All of them had a history. Well, most of them had a history of discipline. I'll give you an example. We have one officer. We've never expected that he would leave his patrol zone unattended without permission of his supervisor, to head back to the police department and take a picture of a female coworker without her permission. We've never expected that. Unfortunately, that met the state guidelines of harassment. Wasn't a bad individual, just made a bad decision. Unfortunately, that forced a misconduct, and that person was terminated. Another officer, way before I even came to this department, had a previous history. He should have been arrested probably for a felony, because it is a felony. He ran a plate for personal use and lied that he was on duty. He ran a plate for personal use and lied that he was on duty. That same person, now, under my leadership and administration here, there was complex and there was detailed and thorough investigation done by fellow union members. By some of them are in the back and investigating. 21 years in the department, discovered that that individual lied, fasted. And when he should have been on his patrol zone, decided to snap a picture and then lie about it, whether he was working or not, of a coworker in his underwear. It's inappropriate. So we had misconduct. But what's really appalling, what I find to be really appalling out of everything, was that you specifically actually did a GoFundMe page for those officers. You have a political agenda.
Well, we have a different view of how this should be resolved.
There is no view, which was most of
Sean,
Okay,
Chief,
all right, I think
I'd
at this
like to-
point, coming from,
Jay,
all right, just a moment, please.
Sure.
Who's speaking?
Chris.
Okay, go ahead, Chris.
Yeah, I just wanted to dovetail. This is a budget meeting, and to have political agendas at this budget meeting is out of hand and out of control. And I want to applaud the chief and what he's done for this city, and shame on everyone that uses this platform for anything other than a budget. This is the same agenda as when I was on the A&T. It's out of control. Let's get moving on. I wake up at 3 a.m. for my job. So let's get moving on and stop with the political stuff.
And I agree 100%. Chief, I want to thank you very much for certainly what you and all your officers do here in our city. And coming from an emergency services background myself, I certainly understand everything that you're saying. So I certainly do appreciate it, Chief. Do you have anything further, Chief, to present?
I just want to state for the record that it wasn't my intent to speak on the officers or fire misconduct, but it was brought out by Ms. Lawman, and I just can't just ignore. Some things are just appalling, especially when you see a GoFundMe page and you have someone misusing their position for their political propaganda. I mean, obviously it's bias, and your bias precludes you being objective, but especially when it came to that rape victim that was re-victimized. When the officers that did not do their job.
Is this going to continue, or are we going to get back to the budget? Because now you're using this platform.
Okay, let's
Mr. Chairman.
Let's come back to order here, okay? Let's come back to order. And Chief, if you don't have anything further at this point, I would say thank you very much for your time and all your answers. And let's move on to the next department.
I have a number of other questions about the budget that have been provided to Mr. Sakara in advance, and so far, the only thing that we've heard is his opening statement.
Well, I think at this point, if the chief is comfortable answering any further questions that are pertinent and related to budget, then I would certainly, invite him to do so. Otherwise, I think these questions could possibly be, put through email. Chief, what is it that you would feel you would like to do at this point?
I have no problem. I have her list of questions. Some of them seem to be repetitive from previous years. I have no problem just kind of going through just to help clarify. A lot of these, it just seems to be, like I said, repetitive, but I have no problem doing it. Question one and two. Obviously, okay. I explained we're going through the hiring process. We have 8 officers. Questions one, as you see in certain areas that might not been spent, we're trying to get to that staff, 58 officers. So obviously, we would need the money in the budget to maintain that. Question 3, as far as the census and the 2% pay, we currently have the 5 lieutenants I stated, 8 sergeants, 3 detectives. There's currently no police contract signed. I do not partake in the negotiations of police contracts, and that's out of the mayor's office. Question 4, you asked for dispatchers. We have 6 full-time dispatchers. We're budgeted for 7. We have 5 part-time dispatchers. You cannot do an average of the week. The part-time dispatchers, the way their salary is if they're available. They basically fill in a shift for when a full-time dispatcher is not available. Number 5, you asked regarding, and I find this an unusual question, you asked who is in different positions, who exactly are in name, and looking for a name from other individuals, I found kind of odd and strange. I'm saying we are pursuing the position towards advancing the accreditation, as I stated. It is handled, a lot of it can be handled by a civilian person, so I have requested a civilian administrator. Some of the things are civilian duties. I do believe if you're a cop and you're trained to be on the road, we try to put you out there for the most part. You saw a salary that's at $24 an hour for a full-time, which is less than a part-time, and that's just because you offer him incentives now and offer he or she health benefits and medical benefits. So therefore, sometimes we give a higher rate for the part-time, but then when you offer the medical and dental and they have vacation pay, it may decrease. Question number 6 you have here.
What is the civilian administrator position? I don't understand what that is.
What's that?
What is the civilian administrator position?
Well, currently we have an individual that works in records. Right now, we're missing one part-time person in records, and a civilian administrator will kind of help with accreditation. This person would be more or less trained for grants, grant writing, as we have an individual now, runs collect and help on the records, and keeps kind of the PD organized on an accredited level.
This may go to a different question that I had later on, but I'm having trouble understanding the money that's being budgeted for the accreditation. You indicated that the police department has already been reaccredited.
We are reaccredited, but just like any accredited facility, it's all the same. Just like if you went to accredited college, just like the Board of Ed that's accredited, a preschool that may be accredited. When you're accredited, there's a cost that comes associated with maintaining that accreditation. And the state law now states you cannot just maintain it. You have to pursue accreditation level 1, that's tier 1, tier 2, tier 3, and federal accreditation. That's going to come with a cost. And that's why you might see some areas increase. You also might see some with wellness and officers. Having accreditation mandates you to have EAP. It mandates you, it's a state law. So we have to accrue the cost. Also, there's now with the new police accountability bill, there's certain wellness checks. There's certain psychological exams that weren't there that are needed every so often now with the officers. It comes with a cost.
What is the cost of the reaccreditation? That's what I'm trying to figure out. What is the thing that you need to do that costs money for reaccreditation that isn't covered by salaries, is my question.
Oh, we'll be in here for days just on that answer. Accreditation, there's different levels in different minors. For example, you might have 1 through 150 for tier 1, you have to meet the criteria. And then you might have for tier 2, 150 to 300, you have to meet the criteria. So until you start encountering it, and we're looking to tier 2, unfortunately, as I previously stated in my opening statement, COVID kind of set us back a little bit, but as it's opening up, it's going to be an associated cost. I mean, hopefully we'll get to tier 2. Recently, it's a long-term effect. I mean, obviously, I don't know the number off the top of my head, but I believe it's about 5% of the police departments in Connecticut are accredited, and now they're being forced to be accredited, the remaining of the departments. So it's going to come associated with a cost. But as I said earlier, we have a history in the Shelton Police Department that we don't overspend our budget. We spend our money wisely. So at any given time, I feel confident enough if I need a transfer and I need something else, I have no problem coming through the A&T board and expressing why we need it and requesting those funds.
It would seem to me that the firing of the several police officers has ramifications more than and other than political. I think there are some financial implications to the disposition of or the reinstatement of those salaries. So I don't think this question is, as you say, a political question. I think there are definite financial implications here. Would you agree to that?
How so? How specifically?
Well, these salaries would have to be made up to cover the former salaries of the 6 individuals who was fired. So therefore, that's a financial matter as opposed to necessarily a political matter. So I think there needs to be some alteration of statements made. I think there are financial rather than political implications involved here.
Well, as I previously stated during my opening statement, that we terminated officers were 6 officers. We hired, I think I said in my opening statement, 11 new officers. Those officers, we already, I think, exceeded by 1 in our hiring process. So those salaries, those positions were almost filled immediately. But coming from yourself, making a statement like that may be so, may be right, and it's a legitimate question. But I don't observe you or notice you to have a political alignment with a certain group. When it comes from other people speaking it, there may be bias, and it may not be objective.
No, I just wondered about the political implications, the financial implications that might be involved here. Apparently, since you hired 11 people, those financial implications were minimal, but they do, at least for a time, did exist. So, the questioning does seem to be a legitimate one as per financial implications.
Well, and as you can see, the budget hasn't changed much from the previous year.
Yeah.
Okay, Chief, do you have any other questions that you feel need to be answered?
I think I pretty much summed it up. And,
Okay.
if anyone has any questions, I thank you for your time and opportunity and allowing me to present the budget.
Well, I'm
All
gonna
right,
ask.
very good. Thank you very much, Chief. So you have a good night, and again, thank you for all that you do for the city.
Mr. Chairman,
All right, Paul, what does it look like we have for the next person in the audience?
Chairman, would some of the aldermen like to speak?
Oh, okay. Very good. Go ahead.
Hey, Mr. Chairman, this is McPherson. I'm just looking, I think there was some questions on the fuel, and the reason I mention it is you look at some of the areas now, we're already at $3 a gallon, if not more. And does the increase reflect those rising prices? Because we might be near $4 a gallon come the summertime.
That was an important question and statement. We believe to be inflated, and that's why we upped the price and the line item for the gasoline. I actually, was just speaking about that regarding today, as well as, pistol permits have been going up, right? And they generate revenue. I think we generated maybe $116,000 already this year just for pistol permits. So therefore, you might see the pistol permit line item going out, but the revenue item offsets it when it comes in. So we're actually at a revenue.
Thank you.
You also have an item in here for a K-9 officer, and we don't have a K-9 officer anymore, correct?
Was
We do not have a canine officer, but we are pursuing a dog handler. When I say a dog handler, that means it might not be a canine, it may be a lab, it may be a bloodhound. For other issues, I'm currently in discussions with the mayor. The academy starts September. If that academy doesn't work out, we'll look at the next nearest academy. I'm currently in discussions with the mayor regarding it.
Chief, this is Anthony Simonetti speaking. Thank you again, you and all your officers and all the staff for what you do for the city of Shelton. Thank you for being number 5. I think that's excellent.
Thank you for your time.
And I think we need to get that out too, because, that's a significant achievement. And as it is to be accredited, we have never, ever been accredited, I believe, in our history. Correct me if I'm wrong. But that, I think, is a substantial achievement, and it should be noted.
Thank you, I appreciate it. Like I said, the officers deserve the credit. They work hard. They're out there in the front line. Any support that I can give, I said if I need a transfer in the future that would benefit the department, I have no problem coming and sitting in front of here and asking for anything and further explaining as long as I have to regarding what we need. Thank you. Thank you for your time.
I would just ask Mr. Hiller to follow up on the items that we haven't been able to speak to this evening, and we're not able to answer all the questions tonight.
okay, and Mr. Hillard, I'm sure we'll accommodate you with that. Mr. Hillard, do we have anybody else that's in the audience that is ready to speak?
Here, representing both planning and zoning and school bus.
Oh, okay. All right. Go ahead, sir.
Mr. Chairman, I ask a little indulgence. Because of a back injury, I'd like to sit at the table rather than stand. Is that okay?
Oh, absolutely. Please do.
You need a microphone in front of you?
Yeah.
Chair.
Good evening, everyone. I'd like to first speak to planning and zoning. As you know, I was the temporary administrator for some time and had worked with the new administrator on some budget items. Unfortunately, Mr. Rossetti has had some surgery and was not able to make it tonight. So with your indulgence, we'll go over the list of questions to see if I can answer.
What's the department? This is budget 900.
I don't think I had a ton of questions. Well, there's a couple.
I'm sorry?
Sorry. Just looking at my questions.
Just as a little background, I believe, I know the Board of A&T and the work it does, it's a recommendation board, and you take a lot of time to do a recommendation. I happen to be chairman of this board for 8 or 9 years, so I'm very well versed in the process. Hopefully I can expedite some of these questions with you. Planning and zoning, 900, question 1. The payroll line item, was funded at 285. The last year allocation was 263. Couple of things to clarify that is that one position was not filled, which is currently in the process of being filled. Also, the people that were made full-time were made at less than the salary level, and therefore there was a savings. In addition, the commission hired a full-time administrative clerk again, and that was included this year, but it was just started a little while ago. We intend to spend what was allocated. The positions that are currently being filled now. You have to remember that the planning and zoning, in my opinion, and served on a lot of committees, Joe, as you know, in this city, is one of the most important commissions in the city. It works very closely with the mayor and economic development in bringing cities, and it's resulted in substantial savings to the public due to the tax revenue. We currently have probably about $500 million in things that are on the table or going to be applied for. So some of this budget, you'll see some increase in it. The administrator finds it to be satisfactory. There are alternatives once we get to full staffing to make up some of those items that were cut. Mainly, the budget stays the same. There was very little that the mayor recommended.